One thing missing from one of my last comparisons of the Vivo X200 Ultra with the Vivo X200 Pro was portraits, and I left it out for a reason, because we want to check out the portraits between those two now here in a bit of a longer video to check which one of those phones provides you with the better portraits in your opinion and which one you like better, because they're very similar, using the same 200 megapixel sensor, just a bit of a different glass there in aperture and a bit of a different rendering process as well. So let's check the portraits out. You check out the classical focal lengths 35, 50, 85 and 135 millimeter. We start off in this studio environment with a bit of extra light coming from the window, and we have a light in the background. What immediately jumps in is the better HDR control on the Ultra in comparison to the Pro, where the Pro is completely white here, overblown. We can see the individual LED lights there of this light there that I have in the background. The other thing that you will notice is a bit of a color difference. We have a little bit of a paler looking me there on the Pro, where it's a bit warmed up on the 200 Ultra, and this is what you will see throughout this comparison, that my face will be a bit more warmed up. The Ultra has of course the advantage of a native 35 millimeter sensor or lens setup here, where we have to crop in on the Pro a little bit, and you can clearly see it here on my eyebrows. The detail level is just very nice looking on the Ultra, very good, and the Pro is not bad at all, but it is a bit artificial looking if you compare it to the Ultra. When it comes to the detail level, it looks like that the Pro has a little bit more detail here around my face. I look a bit older. It's a bit smoothed out here on the Ultra. So the Ultra is getting my face, beautifying it a little bit and not over sharpening so much, where the Pro tends to over sharpen some things, which for portrait are not so great. When it comes to the cutout, both are doing a fine job. Of course, the Ultra has the advantage because it has natural background blur. It doesn't even have to add the unnatural background blur, but yeah, it is adding a little bit maybe. And we can see a bit higher contrast and a little bit of more sharpening again applied on the Pro in comparison to the Ultra. The rest is quite identical. Not much that you can say about those two here. The background blur is nice. Both are set to f2.8 virtual aperture, and I think they're doing a fine job. However, you can see the color difference here. For some reason, the light that was there also is casting here, which it shouldn't technically be able to, this light here. So it is like appearing a bit yellowish, warmish, where here it has the correct color of R2D2 that is there in the background shelf. It's a bit weird. Yeah, a bit weird to see it a bit more warmed up there. That's the only thing that I noticed. Let's jump to 50 millimeter and me standing, and you can clearly see again a bit more palish looking on the Pro, but probably more realistic colors than the bit too warmed up look on the 200 Ultra. So the 200 Ultra is warming things up. It is now cropping in to 50 millimeter from the 35, but the Pro of course is also cropping in, and again of course because we have this 35 millimeter advantage, optical advantage already on the Ultra, it is also exaggerating here a little bit. As you see here, a lot more realistic looking in terms of details than on the Pro. The Pro is doing a little bit too artificial kind of things, together with the bit more palish looking me. It is, yeah, probably I don't look so pale. Just let's take a look at a mirror. I don't have a mirror here, but I can use another smartphone to check out. As I'm looking a bit pale, yeah, for sure. I'm more going towards the direction of the Pro than the Ultra. So the Ultra is beautifying me in terms of face color a bit more than the Pro is doing. Cutouts, both are doing a fantastic job there. I think in the cutouts, even the little hairs and details are very nicely cut out there. The rest of the picture as well, we don't see much of a difference there. It appears to be a bit better white balance here, because this is more white, where here it's a bit more green, yellowish, warmish in terms of color, which is like the difference to my face, which is quite interesting as well. But yes, in terms of detail levels, I think that again the Ultra is winning against the Pro slightly here, even though I like the colors being a bit more realistic on the Pro here. And the next shot is at 85mm, another classical shot with background very warm light that we can see here. Both on first glance are doing a fantastic job. The shadows are a bit more lifted on the Pro. It's a bit darker on the Ultra, and the Ultra in this case is a bit more realistic. When it comes to the detail levels here at 85mm, both are doing a fantastic job, but you can clearly see how much clearer the Pro looks like. The Ultra is making it look like a little bit softer, which I would prefer because then I look a bit nicer. But if you are hunting for details, I think the Pro is doing a slightly better job without making me look too ugly, because it is not over sharpening too much here of my face. Yes, the eyebrows one could say a bit, but it's not too unrealistic in comparison to the 35 and 50mm where it looked a little bit too unrealistic. I think the Pro is now doing a better job at 85mm, where it is not bad on the Ultra at all. The Ultra is less sharp, however. One would say maybe more natural looking, because lenses usually are not so sharp. Maybe some Leica lenses are. But it is a bit, maybe a tad too over sharpened on the Pro. But I'm not sure if it is like artificial sharpening, because it's not looking like it is artificial sharpening. The cutouts as well are nice, but you can see that they are much sharper here again. And this is where I think maybe you can see that it is artificial sharpening, but it could be also the aperture being different, the native aperture, because both are simulating f4.0, but we have a different aperture on the Ultra physically. That makes it like blur out my hair parts already, where it's not doing this here on the Pro so much. So I have to say at 85mm, I tend to like the more detailed look and more realistic face color on the Pro a bit better than the bit softer look that I have here on the Ultra. Even though it's not bad, like I said, both are fantastic shots. And when you take a look at the background there, basically identical, not much of a difference there. Headphones there in the foreground, nice and sharp and detailed. And then we have like a slight fall off of focus. And then the last but not least, 135mm. So when 85mm I prefer the Pro, what about the 200 Ultra at 135mm? Can it redeem itself? Let's check out by zooming in. And you can clearly see they're very, very close. But again, we have the same, where I think that the Ultra is a tad softer than the Pro. The Pro is like exaggerating it a little bit with the detail levels, where some people might say I look a bit older because it is so sharpened up and has so many things that the Ultra is smoothing out, basically. So yes, I look more pleasant on the Ultra, but the more realistic shot is probably on the Pro again, in terms of face color, because I am a bit pale. Yes, even though the sun is coming out here sometimes and I'm going out in the sun, I'm a bit of a palish guy. Detail levels, you can see also the sharpening that we have, or it's the depth of field, you decide, on the Pro in comparison to the Ultra. The eyes, the eyebrows, I think a bit more fake now on the Ultra than on the Pro, but you be the judge. They're always redrawing eyebrows and sometimes even eyes. It is very hard to tell which one is performing better here. But I think I like when it comes to the telezoom lenses and the portraits there, I like the Pro a bit better than the Ultra. The Ultra always has a bit of a smudgy, a bit too soft look, where I didn't complain so much about the 85mm. I could understand that it's also good. Here at 135mm, I think the bit of more sharpened up look on the Pro is doing a bit better. But you can decide and you can tell me down in the comments which one you like better so far in terms of portraits, and if it is really a head-to-head comparison here. And those are all the classical focal lengths now between those two, the X200 Pro and X200 Ultra. So if you only wanted to see the Pro versus the Ultra, you can just turn off the video right now, hit on like and hit on subscribe, and recommend everyone else to look at this video and then make their own decisions. We can see the differences between those, because I could imagine that like the more warmed up look is definitely something that people would like on the Ultra, and I sometimes even prefer over the bit more me looking a bit more pale and not so attractive look. But you be the judge, which kind of area you want to go, more realistic or a bit more polished up kind of look. What we want to do right now is an interesting another comparison, because I have a whole folder here of other portrait shots that I took at 135mm, at least, of those cameras who can do it. We start off with the 15 Pro that I have here. So let's compare the 15 Pro against the Vivo X200 Pro to see. This is Xiaomi on the right and on the left the X200 Pro. I don't have a watermark for the Xiaomi for some reason. Anyway, what we can clearly see is the Xiaomi is warming up the face even more than it was doing on the on the Ultra here. No, I don't want this right now. You can see it's like also a bit more red looking than this warmed up look that we have here on the Ultra from Xiaomi, the Pro from Xiaomi, sorry. So the X200 Pro left against the 15 Pro from Xiaomi on the right. What you can see here is that the Xiaomi is softer for sure, it's more warm for sure. The cutout is worse because all the little hairs are gone completely. And it's taking a split second, I didn't change my hairstyle at all. And it is consistently soft, which is quite interesting, because sometimes you see also on the 200 Pro here, it's getting soft here, and there's a bit sharper again, there's a bit sharper, that recreates the eyebrows a little bit, but in the middle is a bit sharper. Here it's completely the same plain field of softness, which I like, because this is better than certain things sharpened up and other things quite too soft that we have on some phones. So this is very consistent on the Xiaomi, but it's just too yellow, too warmish looking. And yeah, if you like detail levels, then Xiaomi probably not. If you like to be like a bit more realistic looking, maybe this Xiaomi is working for you, but not in terms of cameras. And when we now compare this Xiaomi 15 Pro against the Vivo X200 Ultra, what we can see is, again, it is still softer looking than the Vivo. The detail levels not so much, but it also doesn't give you the vibe, the Xiaomi, of artificial eyebrows. Like the eyebrows look very realistic, like the Vivo does, where it's a bit like different. It is smoothing things out here, definitely. Look at this here, look at this. Yeah, for sure, the forehead, it's much smoother there on the Xiaomi than on the Vivo. And the color difference is like, it's ruining the Xiaomi shot. So if the color would be more correct, then I think I would even prefer the Xiaomi, and the cutout needs to be better. But otherwise, yeah, the Xiaomi is, I think, not winning against either of them in terms of detail levels. But I could also imagine some would prefer the lesser sharpened up kind of look. Now let's check out the Honor Magic 6 RSR. I don't have the 7 anymore, so if people are asking me about the 7, I don't have it anymore, but we supposedly got the same kind of hardcore portrait style. So let's compare it. Again, very warm here on the Honor in comparison to the Vivo. What we can clearly see here is not only warm, but also when we zoom in, a lot worse in terms of artificially recovering the eyebrows, for example. Why does it look so? Because it's like not only recovering the eyebrows, it's also recreating the eyes and a lot of other things. And it looks a little bit like detail lost there. With the hairs, there are a bit more issues there as well with getting the hairs. They're doing their best to get at least this here, but it's a bit more artificial looking for sure. I don't want my emails now. Thank you. A bit more for sure artificial looking on the Honor. Together with a bit more warmish color, it's not that great looking. It looks a bit artificial. There's the Xiaomi, for example, is much better because it looks clean. It's like soft but clean. Here we have a little bit of more details for sure, but it's also not clean looking. It looks a little bit too artificial in my opinion. And now let's compare it to the Ultra from Vivo. Again, a lot warmer, but here I think it is very comparable in terms of sharpness and detail levels. Sometimes I would even say the Magic 6 RSR being a bit sharper here and there, a bit more artificial for sure looking, where it's a bit softer, and this is why it makes it a little bit more realistic looking there. But yeah, look at the hair detail. I think the Vivo is still winning against the Honor there. So yeah, this styling, hardcore style, I'm not the biggest fan of, and I don't like it looking a little bit too unrealistic there. But it can definitely, it's playing the same league, let's say it like this. And now let's have another one, the Oppo Find X8 Ultra. Praised for me as the best in terms of portrait shots. And we can clearly see why. First of all, the color is almost identical to what we have on the X200 Pro. Let's compare it with the Ultra, and you can see it is a bit more warm, a bit more brighter than the Ultra here. But it's just like, it is like the tad more towards yellow to what the Pro is doing, where the Pro might be a little bit too pale or too reddish looking here at the 6x 135mm. And when I zoom in, you can see the night and day difference between those two. I know it is artificially done, this Oppo Find X8 Ultra, but god damn does it look so realistic, like a DSLR almost. Look at the eyebrows, all of them are recreating the eyebrows, but it looks so realistic on the Oppo. It is looking so smooth there that you could forget that this is really a photo done with a smartphone. It could be done with a DSLM. I know it's doing it artificially because the lens is not that great. But it's still also the transferring from sharp and now going into the background blur is so realistic. It's way better than the Vivo here on both sides. You can clearly see it. They have all the hair in there. It is not overdoing it with sharpness, sharpening up here like the Vivo is doing, which is looking a bit artificial for sure. It is not having like this, I'm blurry there and now sharpening there. It is consistent, it is looking very, very great on the Oppo. This is why I'm considering it being the best. And also against the X200 Ultra, we have already the comparison that we had, but now they are on the latest firmware as of end of July. And here as well, it's a night and day difference at 135mm. You can see how soft, how much more artificial the Vivo looks like in comparison to the almost DSLM-like Oppo there. I have to praise the Oppo. It is just simply so good at portraits. And yes, I'm doing the battle and people will say you are an Oppo fanboy, but yes, it is so good. And I was telling you this from the start when I had the Oppo Find X7 Ultra against the Vivo X100 Ultra. The Oppo is the king in terms of portraits there. It's very, very good, and I don't see anyone soon beating it at this one. And now let's go to another one that I will add to the mix. I don't have the X8 Ultra here, but I have the Pura 70 Ultra here. I don't have the 80 Ultra, but I have the 70 Ultra. Yes, this is what I want to say. And this one here is also much closer to what the Find X8 Ultra is doing in terms of face color. It is almost warming up a little bit the palish look that we have on the X200 Pro. But what the Huawei is doing is also adding a bit more contrast. And when we zoom in here, you can clearly see it is trying to do what the Oppo is doing. And it's coming close there, but it's not really there yet. It is looking a little bit artificial here and there. This is what the main issue of the Pura. It's like it is getting close, and they improved a lot upon, but it is a bit artificial looking. It is still, I think, maybe because of the color, but also the eyebrows, maybe a bit more detailed there than the Vivo. The background here, it's like the slightest feint of a little bit of hair visible there. And on the other side, it has gotten almost all the hair, and I think they also have a good algorithm. But the eyes, look at the eyes and the details that it tries to recover there. It is repainted, and you can clearly see it there. and together it's not close to what the Oppo was doing. It is, I think, on the same level as the X200 Pro there in terms of like details and what it tries to accomplish. It tries to do what Oppo is doing, but it's not there yet. It's not closely before. And it's like not over sharpening here so much as the Vivo is doing. So this is quite nice. And yeah, but it's like a little bit too artificial here and there. Now let's compare it with the Vivo Ultra, X200 Ultra. And here we can clearly see that it is better. It is softer here. It's just so much softer on the X200 Ultra that for cropping in, I would prefer the Pura 70 Ultra. You can tell me what you like more, because this is a battle of AI and recreation of eyebrows and eyes and so on. And yes, it is definitely, I would say the Pura maybe second space behind the Oppo, and then comes the Vivo X200 Pro, and then comes the X200 Ultra. So does it mean the Ultra is the worst in terms of this 135mm portrait? No, of course not, because we have one contender still, and this is my favorite actually holding in the hand smartphone, the Xperia 1 Mark 7. But it's, let's check it out. First of all, without zooming in, face color. It is getting towards that I look even warmish on the 200 Pro, where I'm looking very pinkish and even more lifeless on the Xperia. And when we zoom in, you can clearly see no details, noise level above the floor, and cutouts as well. It's like almost cutting everything there. So it's just like as is completely different generation. It is the 1 Mark 6 is not competing in portraits with any phone from the last 2 years. It's just too bad at this point. If you zoom out, it's okay, but if you go to 100%, it's just so bad that you don't really want to look at this. And too bad about the Sony. So there's a little extra here, the Sony. But what do you think now? I have the X200 Pro versus the X200 Ultra in terms of portraits. Which one do you like more? Which one do you like best? And what do you think about me comparing also some other rivals there? Yeah, some people might complain, where is the Xiaomi 15 Ultra? I simply don't have it anymore. I have to work with what I have here, and I chose those kind of devices to compare them with. And which one is your favorite? Which one do you prefer better in terms of colors, in terms of sharpness and details amongst those all and amongst those two? Write it down in the comment section. That's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks. Until the next time. Bye. Man, this was a long video. I really didn't plan to make it this long. I'm just seeing it on edit that it is this long. And by the way, I'm editing it here. Xiaomi Buds 5, Xiaomi Pad 6 Pro, and the large screen, so I can edit it nicely here. And yes, at the same time, I'm watching some old Star Trek Discovery Season 4, because I did not catch up. The last thing that I watched was Season 3. Anyway, yeah, this is my setup where I'm recording everything and where I'm not recording, where I'm editing everything here right now. And why I'm using the Xiaomi Pad 6s Pro? Because rendering out is so much quicker for this 23 kind of minutes video. It would take like 6 hours or so with my laptop, the Dell one, or even some other laptops that I have here, the Asus one, because they don't have GPU support or GPU rendering support, because they're just using the Intel or AMD default card, and no GPU rendering via this one, sadly. Now, so this one is using definitely GPU for rendering out, and this is why it's so quick. So yeah, I, by the way, recorded the intro with the Honor Magic 6 RSR if you're interested in this one. So that's it. Enough for the outro. Bye.